Thanks so much for joining us on another episode of the Pop Culture Cosmos. Gerald Glassford, thanks so much for joining us again, for watching and listening. Truly appreciate it. Make sure you like and subscribe everything we do here at the Pop Culture Cosmos. Coming up later on, I've got an awesome interview with my good friend, Mr. John Orlando, because it's the state of pro wrestling for August 2023 with some big shows coming up for All Elite Wrestling and the WWE. But first up, it is Baldur's Gate 3. It is coming out this weekend for PlayStation 5 and for PC. We'll talk about why it's not coming out yet for Xbox. That's coming up here in a few minutes. But right now, a man who loves his Baldur's Gate, a role playing games phenomenon himself. He's a good man indeed. You got to go ahead and check him out today at Lakerholics.com. Also, as well, every weekend he hosts the Lakerholics Spotlight. It is Jamie Sweet. Jamie, great to have you here, my friend. You wanted this time to talk some Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate 3, again, is a game that's coming out this weekend. It's basically one of the oldest, most, one of the most beloved video game RPGs dating back to the days of PC in the 90s, whatnot, from my memory. Tell us your love about Baldur's Gate and why Baldur's Gate 3 could be one of the biggest under-the-radar hits of 2023.
I don't even know if it's going to go under the radar, to be honest. So, but let's start at the beginning. Like you said, it goes all the way back to the turn of the century with Baldur's Gate 1. If you ever played Baldur's Gate 1, and you'll know, and you feel, well, let's start with this. Let's be honest. It started with my love for just Dungeons and Dragons in general. And I know you share Dungeons and Dragons love as well.
And that's what Baldur's Gate does, is it emulates everything from the world of Dungeons and Dragons.
It takes that rule set, puts it into a video game with a pretty complex storyline that evolves based on your choices, and you progress through the game, and each choice takes you on a different path so that the game actually has quite a high degree of replayability, not just on the moral or, social choices you make, but even just like what character you play. Like any D&D lover will tell you, like half the fun of D&D is coming up with an idea for your character and then letting that loose in this imaginary world and, having fun. And that's exactly what Baldur's Gate 3 is. It's basically taking as much as it possibly can of the 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons rule set, which I like a lot. I did not like the 4th edition at all, to be honest. Like, there was nothing about it that I liked. I will. The only thing I'll say is that I think it maybe streamlines some aspects of the game a little too much, but that's what homebrewing is for. And if you don't know what homebrewing is, I don't like this rule exactly as it's written, or I don't like this exactly as it's written, so we're going to tweak things a little bit, or I'm going to make up my own spells, or whatever. You're making your own homebrew. You're going crazy. You're taking the foundation of what is already a fun game, and you're putting your own little personal touch on it. So that is in essence what Baldur's Gate 3 is out of the box. You have access to a wide range of character classes and subclasses. If you want to make a deep gnome gloomstalker or a drow elf warlock sorcerer, aka Sorlock, they have multi-classing. They have subclassing. They have feats. They have over 600 spells on launch. Like, the game is massive. It's a 122 gigabyte. It takes up 122 gigs on the hard drive after install. It actually drops Thursday. I want to say 8:00 Pacific time for PC.
Yeah, you cannot preload it. You cannot preload it.
You have to. It drops so it's gonna break Steam. It's gonna break GOG, just like Cyberpunk 2077.
Same thing with PlayStation.
It might happen with PlayStation. I don't know if it releases at the same time on PlayStation. It might not release until the actual weekend for PS5. And it will be available on Mac, but it won't be available this weekend. They haven't given an exact Mac release date yet. So if you're one of those Mac gamers, because you're a hardcore Mac lover, you got to wait. But it'll work.
But now Xbox is the one that everybody's been talking about.
I don't think it's going to happen for, I think, licensing reasons. Same way Starfield is only going to work on Xbox and not PlayStation 4, at least probably for the first few months. Now on
Well,
down.
the actual reason why is, as stated by the developers, is because the split screen co-op, which is a feature in Baldur's Gate 3, which is going to be unique for PlayStation 5, PC owners, and the like, and even Mac when it comes to the Mac.
Yep.
It has to be the same for the experience itself for not only users of Xbox Series X, but the S, the cheaper version of this current generation of video games, which I have. I have an S. I do not have the X. So there's a mandate by Xbox that states you have to have every single feature for the X that you do the S, and vice versa. And until you're able to go ahead and maximize it out for both those systems, you can't they can't release the game. So it looks like it's not going to be until early next year for Xbox owners at the time, but they will get eventually their shot at Baldur's Gate.
Everybody eventually releases on everything. Everybody gets everything eventually. That's the law of capitalism and economics. And that's
so
fine.
why are you looking so forward to it?
So early
You've been
access.
talking to me for a month about doing this interview. So
I know.
why are you
More than that? I started playing this last year in 2020 during COVID. So when COVID shutdown happened, obviously everybody got bored. And then on my Steam banner or on my GOG banner, I can't remember which one. I have it on GOG, so likely it was on GOG. There it was, Baldur's Gate 3, early access. And I was like, I love Baldur's Gate. I love Baldur's Gate 1. I love Baldur's Gate 2. I actually loved Icewind Dale and Icewind Dale 2 and Neverwinter Nights. And Temple of Elemental Evil was about where I was like, I don't know, the gameplay is getting a little chunky. It's very true to the rule set, but like it's not as fun to play. Like it just wasn't as smooth an experience. And I kind of dropped off there. Then I was like, early access, $60. What else am I doing with my time right now? I have a Mac that can play it. It's available on Mac. It's a Mac I use to do like music editing stuff. So it's a decent computer, not the best graphics processor, but one that could handle the game. So I tried it out, and everybody, you can tell. All right, I'm just going to preface it by, you start captive. You start as a captive on a mind flayer nautiloid, and you escape the nautiloid, and then you adventure, trying to find out why this tadpole in your head is giving you psionic powers and headaches and allowing you to communicate with various people in the realm. And that's how the game starts. That's all of early access. Getting off the nautiloid is kind of like a tutorial, but it's an awesome tutorial. And then you're wandering around the wilds surrounding Baldur's Gate, finding various, saving druids if you want, or sabotaging druids. Right away, there's like a high degree of morality to the game where, like, do you want to align with the Goblin Fort and sort of wipe out the Druid Grove? Do you want to align with the Dark Druids in the Druid Grove and shut everybody out? Or do you want to align with the Druids and save the Grove and probably end up destroying the Goblins in the Goblin Fort? Although, that's not a prerequisite. You can let everyone live and be kind of a pacifist. And so that in and of itself, and the fact that the way the game plays is like a combination of Skyrim and XCOM, and that you move through the world like you would through Skyrim, Elder Scrolls. It's like if you do or Fallout, the Fallout 3 or 4, where you pull back the camera and it's not a first person shooter view. It's a third person kind of view where you're behind your character and you can move the camera around and stuff. But when combat starts, it hits initiative, and so then you have plenty of time to think about what you want to do. And as you level up, you might need a lot of time to like sit there and be like, okay, do I want to cast a spell? Do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? And so what I loved about it was its faithfulness to the rule set. Like I said, I enjoy the D&D 5th edition rule set. It kind of brings it back to 3.5 a little bit with the skills and the feats and things like that. And it just doesn't make every character like a weird superhero in a fantasy world. But it doesn't get rid of the weird superhero in a fantasy world elements in 4th edition that were kind of cool. Where, like, if you could make an argument that we're going way in the weeds in D&D on D&D stuff here. So if you're not a D&D nerd, maybe skip ahead like 5 minutes, 2 minutes. But what I liked about 3.5 was how in depth it went with some of the minutia. Granted, that can slow the game down, especially with somebody who's a rules debater. somebody who's like, well, I'd like to debate this rule that you're trying to implement, or I'd like to debate the interpretation of this spell or whatever. And fourth edition was like, we're getting rid of all of that. We're making the game super simple, almost like a video game. And it was too simple. It was too watered down. And everybody, if you were a fighter, you had like a few different fighter powers to choose from. And that's basically what you did. And there wasn't as much flavor, I thought. What I like about fifth edition, it brings a little flavor back, but it still keeps that you're like this epic hero kind of element to it with like the feats and some of the abilities you get as you level up in the game. So that's what I mean. I love Dungeons and Dragons. And at the time, the only way to play Dungeons and Dragons during COVID was over Roll20 or Zoom or, some other VTT. I like Roll20, so I use Roll20, but a lot of people don't like Roll20. That's fine. But it's limited. It's not the same feel of sitting around your table with your buddies, hanging out, rolling dice. And this game with its multiplayer, I have, two of my oldest friends from high school. We're going to have a Baldur's Gate campaign. We're going to each have a guy. We're going to multiplayer. You're going to have to 4 people in your party. Although I think there are modders out there that have figured out in early access. I'm sure it'll take them a lot longer to mod the actual game, but there are modders out there who have added, you can have up to 6 party members, which actually feels a little unfair based on the encounters as they're currently constructed. Although they do have a difficulty level slider that is supposed to make the game nigh impossible to get through. But as they've gone through early access, they keep upgrading the game. And all we've ever had access to is an incomplete version up to this point, an incomplete version of Chapter 1, which in and of itself is a very satisfying game. It doesn't end, but like when you play it, you like having these really fun battles, or you're discovering these really interesting facts, or finding these really interesting people who are, these NPCs and various characters in the area that you explore. They're just kind of interesting. And the choices and dilemmas you encounter are very interesting. And so like, that aspect of the game I find very enjoyable personally. And again, I'm a huge D&D fan, role-playing game in general fan, but D&D number 1. And it's like playing D&D. But there's no DM, there's nobody to argue with. You just got to play, and you just got to do your best. And if there's that guy in your party who who you play with, who's like, I move ahead of the group like 100 yards, and everybody's like, wait, where are you going? And he's like, oh, well, now you're fighting a horde of giants alone. That can be replicated here. You can, some people can be standing around reading something, somebody else can just start walking away. The map is huge. There's a lot of verticality to the map, which adds a lot of fun. That doesn't really come across in a tabletop edition of D&D as well. And Larian has just done, they've produced some really great games over the year. If you're a fan of Divinity Original Sin, you might even get kind of an early. I hadn't ever played that game until I played Baldur's Gate 3. Then I went back and played a little bit of Divinity Original Sin. I haven't finished that game, which I ought to at some point. But right away I was like, oh, there's very similar elements between the two games. Both in terms of humor, but also the way the game is designed and like your interaction with the world around you, like how you discover things, and they're like, oh, there's like a weird hole here. I can dig up a chest. That's interesting, So it's just super lot. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And like I said, the game in early access was already quite satisfying. You go into the Underdark. You go, it's D&D, and you end up. It looks like you end up, trying to save or destroy or just kind of get by in Baldur's Gate, the city itself. Which, if you're a fan of the actual like Dungeons and Dragons lore, and you've read Dungeons and Dragons books like the R.A. Salvatore, Dritz Do'Urden series, or anything with Elminster, or any of those guys, like anything Forgotten Realmsy, you're going to recognize a lot of these landmarks and a lot of these characters. Volo's in the game, and he's hilarious. And it's just, there's all these cool things about the game that I have just, as a D&D fan and a fan of like fantasy in general, have just already in early access gotten a tremendous amount of fun with. And I put well over 300 hours into the early access part of the game, just messing with combinations of characters. And there's not even multi-classing yet in early access. That's only going to come with the full release.
So I ask you, my friend, are you
Yeah.
upset with Larian's decision to tell everybody who's been playing the game for years now, in some cases, like yourself, in access, public access, in pre-access per se?
Uh-huh.
Are you upset about the fact that you're not going to be able to take all that work that you've made over the course of 300 hours
No,
and be able to play the game? You're going to have to play it from the start, fresh.
no, for three reasons. Number one is they've been doing that with every update. The game is patched, like major patches, 9 times. I think I came in on patch 3 or 4. I think I came in on patch 3 and like right away patch 4 dropped. And like every time a new patch drops, they say, just to let you know, your old saves are no longer compatible. You're starting over.
Mhm.
And I must have escaped the Nautiloid 30 times. And sometimes I don't escape the Nautiloid. Sometimes the Nautiloid gets me. I mean, you can always reload, but like the point being is like you don't even like the tutorial is a challenge. So they've prepped you for this moment all along, and they've not made any promises that all of this is going to carry over. Two, the full game has features of it too that we haven't had access to. All the spells aren't available in early access. You can't play a monk player character or a dragonborn or half orc in early access yet. Those are all dropping for the first time when the game actually releases. Multi-classing hasn't been available. A lot of the feats aren't available. A lot of the magic isn't available. And there was a level for a long time. There was a level 4 cap. You can only advance as far as 4 in early access. Towards the end, they upped that to 5. Which then that reinvents your interest in the game because you're like, oh, what can we do at level 5? And so that's in a way I've been using early access as practice. I've been in the gym. At least that's how I personally think of it. I've been in the gym. I've been working on my skills. I got my crossover step back ready. I got my up and under layup, around the rim ready, and I've got a elbow into the defender, pivot around. Not an offensive foul. It's just a nice spin move ready. And now when the game drops, I'm going to be able to utilize these tools and make what I believe will be a very fun character to play. Now, I'm not saying that should stop anyone. There's no, like Dungeons and Dragons, there's no wrong character. There's no wrong build. There's no, you can't have too strong or too weak of a character. The game just doesn't work like that. Some people get really into min-maxing or like, I want, the best possible chance of success at every encounter and yada, yada, yada. And that is also available in this game. You can really get into the min-maxing element of it and try to like maximize your actions, maximize your damage rolls, maximize your damage per second or, per attack. All of these things still exist in the game, but at the core of it is this wonderful sounding story that we've only just barely got a glimpse of, where it seems, just based on the literature in the game and some of the symbology in the game and some of the references that some of the bad guys or allies of the bad guys have dropped in the game, feels like you're basically going to be presented with the chance to either ally with death or try to thumb death in the nose. And so right away, epic story, hundreds of potential characters you could create, and you have a different. No playthrough will be the same because you have choices based on when you enter dialogue. There's dialogue options based on just the situation, your race, your class, skills you might want to use. The game really takes all of the elements of Dungeons and Dragons and really puts it into video game format incredibly well. To where I remember after I played Baldur's Gate 3, I was like, man, there are like some spells in Dungeons and Dragons that I just completely ignored that I'm going to go back and see how I can better use these in my real Dungeons and Dragons games as a DM and as a player. Like Speak with Dead as an example. Like I never really think about speaking with dead when I play Dungeons and Dragons. I'm like, oh, there's a dead guy. Who cares? Does he have any loot? But in this game, if you bring someone back to life, they might have a clue, or they might be like, oh yeah, look under that rock over there. And then the rock doesn't show up unless you talk to the guy, or it doesn't show up as an interactable object unless you either have a super high perception or you interact with this dead person. And so, there's just a lot of ways to go through the game. And you won't be rewarded more. A wizard won't be rewarded more than a fighter. Won't be rewarded more than a thief. Won't be rewarded. You're all gonna die, and you're all gonna reload, and you're all gonna have a lot of fun. So if you enjoy Dungeons and Dragons and you like video games, and it looks like in the grand tradition of all the Baldur's Gate games, there's going to be some type of circus. It looks like this is going to be an extraplanar circus of some type. There's a circus that's involved. I mean, just everything about it seems to me personally super fun. If it seems overwhelming to you, there have been some YouTubers, Wolfheart FPS, a guy, I think his name is NV Evil, NZ Evil, something like that. Look on YouTube. There's a lot of people who've done really well done character build videos that like help you kind of like suss out, like if you're a little bit intimidated, never played D&D, never played the first two Baldur's Gate games. It feels like a lot. You feel overwhelmed. There's a lot of YouTubers out there. There's a few YouTubers. I could definitely recommend Wolfheart FPS as like a guy who puts a lot of thought both into his videos and into like his builds and keeping it fun. Not just being like, and this is how you can make the most damaging character, or this is how you can make the best spellcaster. It's like, well, this is kind of a fun idea I wanted to try, and this is how I got to this point, and this is what this character is kind of capable of doing, and go forth and enjoy. One of the thing I want to mention about that's something that isn't included in early access that will be included when the game drops is a character. I don't want to say it's a character class. It's an aspect of any character you want to add called the Dark Urge, which basically it compels you to try to kill everyone. Mm-hmm. So if you're one of those people who's like, I don't care about anything, but you can resist the dark urge. You can have your conscience can win out, and it's going to be interesting. But I mean, here you are, this maniacal creature with all this power in a city full of innocents. What do you do? Here you are, maniacal creature, city, immense power, small goblin, small, gnomish village of poor, peaceful gnomes. What do you do? Same with the goblin. So it's just going to be really interesting to see how all of these various elements play out. And, to their credit, and some people don't like this and some people do, Larian's done its own thing a little bit with the D&D rule set. They've done some home brewing themselves. I haven't seen the monk class, but they're supposed to have improved the monk class. A lot of people find the monk class to be a little bit weak in Dungeons & Dragons 5, and it bums them out a little bit because they love the idea of playing, a martial artist. That is evidently not the case. I mean, we haven't seen the monk, so I can't tell you. But I would be happy to do in a couple of months a check back in, and is the game still super fun? If you're up to it. And
always, my friend.
And you should maybe get the game, and you can maybe join me or my buddies, or at least me, on a multiplayer session, and we could adventure together.
I have to wait until the Xbox comes out.
No, you got a PC that can handle it.
Oh my gosh, no! My PC is ancient.
It is.
I bought it in 2012.
Well, then we might not be able to multiplayer because I'm strictly PC. I'm strictly PC.
Yeah, that's what it is. There should be crossplay. Crossplay should be a thing, though.
They have cross saves. I don't know. They have a cross save feature. I don't know what that means exactly.
But cross play, as far as being able to.
I hope they have a feature like that. I know that that's not supposed to be available on Starfield on drop, and that's kind of a bummer because
Starfield's only available on PC. Yeah, like you said, PC and Xbox, but it won't. Yeah,
I don't even think they have multiplayer on Starfield on drop. I think it's just going to be solo play. Yes. But I'll bet they add multiplayer after a year or so. I'll be surprised if they don't, because they have multiplayer on the Fallout series.
That's true.
And so I don't understand why they would deny people the ability to sojourn through space together and blast.
Elder Scrolls, they had to go ahead and create their own online experience away from the basics Skyrim, Oblivion type deals. So Elder Scrolls 6, when that finally comes out 50 years from now, that will still just be probably a solo experience as well. But it is.
I'm really excited about this game.
It takes them forever. It takes them forever at Bethesda to go ahead and finish the Elder Scrolls games. I mean, 2011. It's already 12 years later. They're just taking their time. Starfield's taking up a lot of their time, so we'll see what happens.
But
I'm looking forward to that.
I was
Can I
gonna
get
say,
that?
are you not looking forward to Starfield? Does it not
I,
look like a life-ending game where you're gonna be
well,
like, sorry, family, sorry,
that's
kids, sorry,
that's
sorry,
that's
other
why I'm getting
obligations.
Xbox Games Pass. I'm just waiting until I've got 180,000 credits already that got saved up just for that.
Good
But
man. Good.
once again, it is Baldur's Gate 3. It is coming out this weekend, coming out of public access into the world as far as a regular game, coming out for PC, coming out for PS5, coming pretty soon to the Mac, and eventually, sometime next year, coming out for the Xbox Series X and S. Jamie, it's been great to have you here. You've been wanting to talk Baldur's Gate 3. I'm glad you got a chance to do so. Again, please stop by when you have an update on that or anything else you want to talk about in the world of pop culture. You're always welcome, my friend.
Thank you. I don't know much about wrestling or and a lot of other games. Like I don't. I pick and choose my games wisely. I tend to play kind of boring games. Like world building games,
Mhm.
games where you kind of just leisurely click and can relax your brain a little bit, as opposed to like games where, like, my God, I'm in the middle of the war, and like that. That's a little much for me at times. But for me, this is kind of a perfect blend of those two, because like you can explore the world, and then when combat hits, it's initiative, and like you think about your turn, then the next guy goes. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll see if we ever get to play together.
We'll see indeed, but I would love the opportunity to do so. It is Jamie Sweet. You can catch his regular work at Lakerholics.com under the 5 Things articles. Tremendous. And of course, everything that he does for us, the Lakers Fast Break, whether he stops by for one of our post games, stops by for one of our regular conversations, or he hosts Lakerholics Spotlight. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to go ahead and see that this weekend as well. So, Jamie,
I think so.
appreciate all your time. Looking forward to seeing what happens with Baldur's Gate 3 to see if it gets the kind of love from gamers that you have for it. Looking forward to hearing what's going on with the game coming up very soon right here at the Pop Culture Cosmos.